We are in. It always sounds so serious when it's like recording in progress.
I know. Hey, everybody, welcome. And we're so excited to see all of you. We'll get started shortly. I'm just going to give people a few moments to get their audio preferences settled before we begin. All right, it's so exciting to see such a great turnout. Hello and welcome to today's webinar. Before I hand it off to our panelists, I just want to cover a few technical details in case you haven't joined us in an ACRO webinar in the past. We use Zoom webinar, which is really similar to Zoom meeting, except for that your cameras and mics are disabled by default. So to interact with one another or with our presenters, you have two primary options. For discussion and general comments, please use our chat button. This does default to hosts and panelists, meaning only that we will see your messages. But if you want everyone to see it, make sure that you're selecting everyone from the drop-down menu in the two right above where you type your message. And of course, if you have any questions, please use our Q&A button. You can ask questions anonymously and can view and comment on existing questions as well. I believe our hosts are going to be answering questions as they come in, or some of them will be saved until the end. So if your question isn't answered right away, know that we will cover it at the end as time permits. You can ask questions anytime, but please note again that some questions will be answered after the panel. Now, without further ado, I'd like to pass the mic to our host, Reed Kissling. Welcome in, Reed.
Great, thank you. I'm glad to join with you today and have Doug McKenna along with me. We'll do intros as we begin. So for those of you who I haven't met before in past, my name is Reed Kissling, and I serve as Director of Systems Integration with Stellic. I've worked in higher ed for a couple of decades, starting in the Registrar's office and most recently served as a VP of Student Development and CIO at a small institution in the Oregon area, where I'm located right now. I've been working with ACRO Consulting over a number of years, and now work with Stellic for the last year in this capacity. Was a user of the product and now get to help institutions implement. So it is my pleasure to join today and to spend some time with Doug. So Doug, would you introduce yourself too?
Sure. Thanks, Reed. I'm Doug McKenna. I'm the University Registrar at George Mason University in Fairfax, Virginia. I have been in higher ed for 20 years. I've worked at a variety of institutions, both public and private, starting at the University of Notre Dame, Michigan State University, George Washington University, American University, and now currently George Mason University. And I've held a variety of responsibilities in various registrars' offices, and I'm currently the university registrar at Mason. So all of it's my responsibility. So
yay.
Good times. Yeah.
All right. Well, we want to kind of talk a little bit about what we are planning to do today. So here's a brief agenda, what we're planning to cover. So we want to cover three areas primarily, and then we'll talk a little bit about technology. But in particular, as we talk about this concept of degree clearance and what that might look like, something that's been around for a long time with a storied history. But we want to talk about what does it look like for us to improve administrative efficiency and really reduce administrative work. That may be a key, but a huge part of this too for us. I know this is part of Doug's heart, and it's ours within Stellic is really promoting student agency, helping students to better understand the process themselves so that they can engage in that. And then a key part of any type of change or improvement really necessitates collaboration and having a good understanding of the stakeholders where we can champion modern practices together is important. And then we'll obviously have a little bit to say about technology. There's a variety of different options there, but technology is going to be a key piece. And how do we address that? So we'll follow up with some Q&A at the end, and we'll try and pick those up as they may be appropriate. But we'll be glad to address those as we go. So, all right. As we begin, let me just provide. This is a webinar that is really sponsored by Stellic and in our connection with Acro. So it may be helpful to provide just a high level overview about what Stellic is and does for some context, and then we'll get into the meat of this. So what I want to basically highlight is we've got several different modules that Stellic provides. What we are going to be focusing on today is really just a couple of these, with primarily the audit module and workflow that could impact this. But as a whole, Stellic is a degree management platform. What progress is as they move through their educational programs, helping them navigate the whole experience. And as noted, some of the modules that we have that pertain to what we're going to talk about today are those related to audit and workflow. One of the things that you may be interested to know about Stellic is it was actually built by students who wanted more visibility and even control over the processes that they went through for planning and the degree completion process. And they worked with a number of registrars' offices, starting first at their own institution and then at other institutions to really streamline process. So that also then included feedback and participation with other stakeholders like those in advising that really care about. So that's a key thing for us to participate in, and really driving it from a student perspective was important. We've got thinking through the whole degree completion process with a variety of different institutions we're already partnered with. We've received a lot of input, and part of our session today is to even participate in that and get input from you as we go. So really helping institutions streamline process and kind of look at customized workflows for every institution. So, okay, enough of the Stellic commercial. So now on to what we're about for the rest of our time. So as we begin, and with kind of our primary content for our webinar, take on everybody's connected here and get a sense of priorities. So let's start with the first poll that talks about these topics that we're addressing. Which one of these topics, or which of these topics, are most important to you? And we'll let that continue to go as you answer that, and then we'll get back to that as we move. But let's begin by talking a little bit about the Mason context, right? It's not just me talking here. Doug is joining us, and I'm
just a pretty face, Reed.
Yeah, just a pretty face, right? If only that were the case. So
honestly, my grandma used to tell me that I had a face made for radio.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks, Grandma. So as we begin, it's you believe strongly in this. Obviously, you're the one that has really proposed this topic. So would you just give our participants a sense of, and then also the context at GMU? And I know that in this process, we're not fully live in the process with Stellic and Mason, but so we're in process and talking about it, and that's a key part of what we're looking at in partnering with you in making this improvements in the process. So what does this look like at Mason?
Sure, absolutely. So thanks. Hi, everyone. Thanks for spending some time with us talking about the degree clearance process, which is not always like one of the craziest. It's like all registrar work. It's not like super sexy process, but I appreciate you spending some time because it is one of those fundamental things that if you don't do it well, it has a negative effect on your students. And so one of the things that I am sort of an advocate for is really digging into these processes at your own institution. And I'm not foolish enough. I've done this at now 5 different institutions, and each one of those institutions has done things ever so slightly differently. And based on different student information systems, based on different degree auditing systems, based on different academic governance set up at the institutions, et cetera. So take pretty much everything that we say here sort of with a grain of salt. Don't hesitate to ask, like, how is this applicable to my institution? Or if you want to dig deeper and follow up on a question, you're always welcome to reach out. So Mason uses DegreeWorks. Currently, we're a banner institution, so we have Ellucian products primarily. Currently, we are actively implementing Stellic, and that will replace our degree audit system. It's the biggest change that we've made to the degree audit system in probably 15, 18 years. And so it's a big project. The degree clearance process right now, we function using a variety of reports through MicroStrategy, which is the enterprise business intelligence reporting system that is available to us through ITS, the information technologies services at the institution. And so we have a process right now where, like many other institutions, the student initiates the process by applying for graduation. And that application for graduation kicks off a series of ensuing events that all lead up to, ideally, the student being awarded a degree and receiving a diploma. In between there is a Team DC within the registrar's office at Mason, the team degree clearance, who basically shepherds this process through and coordinates with the academic units. We review the degree audit as part of this. We have follow up with the academic units when or if necessary. Sometimes there's outreach to students. And then it is an iterative review process that takes time. We are currently doing a handful of things that are Mason specific. And so when we review an audit the first time, we'll put a special code into Banner, and then that special code gets changed when we review that audit the next time, and it gets changed again in order as a final clearance. And so that's one of the workarounds that we have created in order to track this process through from start to finish. And so we desperately have needed to look at the process end to end. And one of the things that I want to advocate for overall is this idea of not requiring students to apply for graduation. And so you'll hear this as either an auto apply or an auto review, something along those lines. And the application for graduation is one of those sort of archaic administrative practices that exists from way back when institutions didn't have great insight into how their students were progressing as an institution. Individual faculty members or academic advisors may have had excellent insight, but there wasn't a way for the institution to broadly know, okay, these students are on track, these students are not. And so with the advent of digital degree audit systems, and then with the improvement of those systems, we have much, much better ways of tracking a student's progress, and we have much better insight into when they will complete their degree requirements than we ever did before. And this is an administrative step that students only do one time, and it's only in post-secondary education. And so it's something new to them. At Mason, we have a very large population of first generation students, and they've never heard about applying to graduate. And so we routinely have to chase them down and email them, remind them, cajole them to get into the pipeline to have their degree cleared. And so routinely we will have people come back and say, hey, I thought I graduated. And we'll say, hey, you never applied to graduate. And they'll say, hey, I applied to graduate when I applied to the institution. Nobody comes to your institution and continues to take classes and make progress toward a degree because they don't want their degree. So this is one of those hoops that the sooner higher ed can get rid of and find different ways around, the better. So if you take nothing else from this webinar, which I hope that will not be the case, but if you take nothing else from this, think through how at your institution would you implement an auto review or an auto apply process to get rid of the student's application for graduation. Now, Reed, I'm just going to keep going on because that's what I do. If you want to jump in and redirect the questions, or if there are anything in the chat, there were people who are like, he's crazy. But this is one of those things where if you can get rid of that administrative hangup, you will improve your graduation percentages, because you will have people who are in the pipeline, are reviewed, have their degrees conferred in the system, who wouldn't have done that otherwise. And so just by putting them into the system, you're improving your own institution's stuff. We've got a couple of things that are built on top of and associated with the application for graduation. We can talk about those, like where to send the diploma, what diploma name do they want included on the diploma. Sometimes there are exit surveys associated with a grad app. Sometimes there's a fee associated with a grad, which is also crazy. But I'll pause there for a moment. Kick it back to you.
No, that's great.
Oh,
Okay.
but wait, it gets back to the first point, which is about administrative burden.
Yes.
Think about all the things that you don't have to do. You don't have to maintain a form. You don't have to receive the form. You don't have to process the form. You don't have to follow up with students who have not yet applied for graduation, who you expected to apply for graduation. So really, you're cutting off a stream of administrative tasks, and then you only have to enable a student's ability to opt out or to communicate diploma name and diploma address. So that's back to the original 3-part.
Yeah, no, that's perfect because I know even as participants noted, the kind of improvements in the administrative process is a key piece, at least for a lot of us who are here on this webinar today. Let's actually kick off the next poll and ask the question about automation. What kind of automation do you currently have in the degree clearance process? I think that will be interesting, but Doug and I will continue to talk. And let me ask you the next question about that, which is what, Doug, from your perspective and at your institution and your history at other institutions, and maybe even interacting with others within the profession, what are some of the common anomalies or requests that kind of pop up and affect graduation clearance down the line that we're trying to account for?
Sure. You posed the question before I answer the question. You talked about automation, and I want to put a pin in that because
Great.
People will freak out a little bit when you say we want to auto graduate students.
Yes.
I don't use that terminology because of the sort of visceral reaction that people have. And I want to make sure that the institution understands that the process is a process and that there are many people involved in the process. And so we want to automate the administrative functions, and we want to make those as efficient as possible. But what we don't want to do is undercut the academic unit's authority and responsibility, really, to play a role in verifying that the student has completed all of their degree requirements. And so at some point, there's always a manual aspect to the degree clearance process. And you want that to be the case. You want to be able to go back and say, look, we've got these checks in place, we've got these oversight processes. Where I guess I would want to go is to have more active involvement in the substitutions, exceptions, and waivers into the degree audit earlier in the process. And so this is going to bleed through a couple of the different units because there's administrative overhead, there's technology employed, there's collaboration with stakeholders. This affects a bunch of the overarching subjects for the webinar today, but it's a critical piece. And my argument is this. The student needs to know what they're required to do to get their degree. And forever and ever, universities published the catalog and said, figure it out. And then degree audits came into place. And in general, those are managed by the registrar's office. And we take the catalog and we interpret the policies, we interpret the college and university gen ed requirements and the major requirements. And we present those in a way that a student can follow and can register accordingly. Where things get dicey is that 100% of our students do not adhere to 100% of the requirements. That's just a given. And I tell people at the university, we are a university. It's got the word universe in it. And so like it is a world of possibility. What you want to be able to do is enable students to explore and to learn and to have rich educational experiences. But then you need somebody, an academic advisor or a program director, somebody to say this exploratory course that the student took is going to count for this requirement. So that's done. And that's an academic unit decision. Who processes those into the degree audit can be a bigger conversation. I have worked at institutions where academic advisors initiated that in the system, and then the registrar's office was responsible for reviewing and processing. At Mason right now, it is a form that gets sent in. It's an electronic form. It's not I gesticulated like it's a paper form, but it is an electronic process that they submit. And then we in the registrar's office actually do the manual manipulation of the degree audit to represent that substitution, exception, and waiver. But that's a critical piece to get in early and often as the student moves through their curriculum. It can't wait until the very end because that eliminates our ability or diminishes our ability to do the kinds of reporting that we want to be able to do in order to put the student into the graduation pipeline automatically. And then also it diminishes our ability to expedite the degree clearance because at that point, that's when we have to catch up with 4 years of substitutions, exceptions, and waivers. Mm-hmm. You can start small, and I recommend starting small. Mm-hmm. Work with a trusted partner in an academic unit. Become best friends with the academic advising community on campus. Listen to their needs, assist with what you can, and then study the trends of the exceptions, the waivers that are happening at your institution. And that's where you need to get involved in the curriculum management piece. This also runs through the registrar's office at Mason. It may not run through the registrar's office where you are, but we want to be involved in the curriculum management and review process because we want to be able to also marry that up with, all right, well, this course has been approved as an exception into this requirement 27 times over the last semester. Shouldn't that be added to the catalog so that we don't have to keep doing this substitution every time? Mm-hmm. And those critical mass sort of breaking points are going to vary from discipline to discipline and institution to institution. But that is one of the ways that you can streamline your degree clearance process. And it's counterintuitive because it's almost completely divorced from the actual degree clearance process. But it involves creating relationships, working those relationships, being involved, and then understanding your data and communicating those data either to the faculty senate or the curriculum committees or the departmental committees to say, you're doing all of these substitutions for this one requirement. What's going on? Can we talk about this? This is hurting your students because students, again, Mason, a lot of first generation students, they don't know to explore and take a class and then ask to have it count for something. And so that's an inequitable treatment of students. They don't have the same experience as other students who might say, I took that and I'll just have Professor so-and-so approve it as a exception. And so getting in front of and ahead of the substitutions, exceptions, and waivers process is a critical function of making sure that your degree clearances go smoothly. It's a lot of work. I'm not going to blow smoke about that. And it's ongoing and iterative with the academic advising community, because there's almost always turnover there, with faculty senate to get buy-in, or your curriculum committees to get buy-in, because they've designed the curriculum, and then they are sometimes reluctant to change it and modify it based on exceptions. So there we go.
Yeah. So I hear you saying a couple of key things there, one of which is pulling data out of your systems and even good reporting so that you can provide better input into the curriculum process, potentially.
Yes.
I know that's a key. Yeah, I know.
I was going to say that's actually one of the reasons that we're really excited about moving to Stellic. And, advertisement aside, the analytics, the robust analytics that come available with Stellic enables us to do that kind of requirements-based reporting without having to rely on our ITS business intelligence team to map the fields from DegreeWorks, to make those available in the data lake, and then to, surface those data elements through MicroStrategy, and then enable people to write reports against them. So we'll be able to use those Stellic provided reports to say, here are all of the courses that have been applied to this requirement over the last X number of years. It'll be helpful in program review for the individual departments. It'll be helpful for the registrar's office to be able to say, here's the data. It'll be helpful for students because academic advisors will be able to make better time of their academic advising sessions, and they'll be able to do more targeted and intrusive sort of outreach to say, these are my juniors who haven't finished this requirement and they're off track. And so they can communicate a specific message directly to those students to say, either come see me, or you need to register for this at your earliest opportunity, kinds of things. Yeah. So that's a really exciting part that we are looking forward to with the implementation of Stellic at Mason.
Well, and I know one of the key pieces too is in some of the work that I've done with Acro Consulting and working with different institutions is excessive numbers of exceptions can compromise your academic quality and be an accreditation issue. So knowing that is an important part for that piece. You also noted just some key aspects about workflow, and I know our last poll question was about automation in some ways, not necessarily automating the entire process. Sorry. But yeah, that's all right. But a lot of people that responded noted that it's completely manual, and so even mapping your processes is a key piece to that, and making sure that you are very aware of what the process is and that it's consistent across the entire institution as much as possible. I was surprised there were a number of people who responded, or several people who responded, that said that they have significant automation, which is really cool. And so thoughts that you have, even in the comments or chat, if you're doing automation that you could provide or input to other people, if you're a participant, that would be great to get your take on that too. So let's move on and talk a little bit about students, because this is a huge part of why we're doing this in the first place. I know, Doug, that's on your heart, and again, it's a key part of our values as a company at Stellic. So let's actually launch our next poll on that one, which is, how aware are your students about whether or not they're ready for degree clearance? And I know as you are answering that question, I'll make a comment just from my history as a registrar. I know one of the challenges that that I've had at various institutions that I've worked is ensuring that the degree audit, or even if you are using manual checklists, that it captures literally everything that's required, not just the course requirements, but non-course requirements and milestones and residency and all sorts of different things for grad students, thesis submission. A lot of those exist in various different places. As we've implemented with Stellic at some partner institutions, we know that some academic departments still track things on sticky notes. So that probably is not surprising to you as you're listening. But I'd love to get your take on just student agency. How important is it to have everything captured in the degree audit?
It's foundational, critical. Students are at the heart, or should be at the heart, of everything that we do. And even as we look at ways to reduce sort of administrative burden, the reason that we're doing that is so that we can improve the service that we are providing to our students. The Registrar's office is a service office, and we provide service not just to students, but to faculty, to staff, to other student services offices, to alums, and to members of the community. And so without that focus on service, I think that we are really, the work that we do can feel empty because it just continues and continues and continues. Having that focus on students and ensuring that they know what they're doing, they know what they're supposed to be doing academically. Whenever you look at your degree audit, comprehensive has to be one of those words that is used. This is the comprehensive set of requirements that the student is being held to. You can't have a degree audit that's like 85% of their stuff, and then the student get 100% there and have you say, oh, you're not done, see you in summer. That's not a good situation. And with any degree audit, you also want to make sure that you err on the side of a false negative rather than a false positive. So I would rather have a requirement that is represented that can never be met automatically in the system, just so that it's there and will continue to be represented to the students so they know it's on their to-do list, even if somebody has to go in and clear that manually. Yeah. Rather than not have it there and have the student be surprised by it. Students, in a lot of ways, interactions with students feel, or students can feel and have shared with me as having felt like, they submit these things and maybe there's a confirmation email that comes as part of the application for graduation. But then there's nothing. And it's that's anxiety producing. That, did I do it right? Did I submit it? Did it, are they working on it? And we ask our students to apply for graduation all the way back at the time when they register for their final term, which is, by the way, about 3.5 months before their final term sometimes. And so there's a long time between the time that they apply for graduation and when they actually graduate. So giving them some avenue to check for themselves. Okay, I have applied to graduate. It is being reviewed by the school or college. It has been approved by the school or college. It is pending action in the registrar's office. The registrar's office has conferred my degree. The diploma has been ordered. Like, even Domino's has figured this out, right? Where like you go online, you order a pizza, and Domino's can tell you, where it is in the process. We are American higher education. Why can't we do this? And the answer is because we're not trying. If we really thought about this and if we pushed to this, we could do it really well. And that's what I'm trying to get us to, so that students don't have to think, like, where is it? Do I need to reach out to someone? If you had something like a status monitor that said, here's where you are in the process, here's when we expect the next update, that's going to stop them from calling you. That's going to stop them from coming into your office. That's going to stop them from sending that email. It's going to stop them from sending the email to the president's office saying the registrar's office is unresponsive, because we haven't said anything to them since they applied to graduate. And now it's April and they're worried, did I do everything? So having something as simple as that, as a tracker for students to see and to, assuage some of their concern and anxiety. That final semester of school, cast your memory back, is a blur. And, the fewer administrative obstacles we put in the way of our students' success, the better. And we want happy graduates. We want them to be happy alums. Eventually, we want them to be happy donors. But that starts with giving them more information, giving them the agency that they deserve to be able to then take corrective action if something is amiss, and to do the outreach to an academic advisor and say, I thought we had a conversation about that. I thought that was done. Those types of things. Where things go awry in the current process are really related to the application process for graduation. I didn't know I needed to apply for graduation. And so when they do the outreach they come to the grad fair and they're like, I want to rent regalia. You're not on the list. So that's a thing. Eliminating that would go a long way. A second piece is about cast back to the substitutions, exceptions, and waiver processing. The longer that sits and waits and has a student's audit represented as not complete, or not as complete as it should be, that's going to be problematic. And students run into that all the time currently at Mason. It is a process and an effort to make with the academic advising community. And then also all of those are processed in the registrar's office at Mason. And sometimes we get swamped. And so not waiting until the very last minute helps everybody, because we can process them as they go through rather than getting 14,000 of them all together. So those are hiccups that come at the end.
So as you've noted, and I see there's a couple of comments or even questions related to this, because one of the key pieces to this is transparency, making sure that there's clear list of all the requirements that students have to complete in order to finish. Another key piece of that transparency is where do things stand in process, including those exceptions and changes to their program, maybe even adding a concentration or shifting things around so that they can have a clear view of what's going on. And there's various different ways that institutions will do that. Some of them are technological solutions and some are not. But at least following that principle of transparency is a huge part of that process to promote student agency. So I appreciate you noting that. And a key thing for us, this kind of gets along with some of the questions that have been answered about even Stellic as an example, but regardless of whatever system or platform you're using, integration with your SIS is essential, because again, a key piece of this is improvements to the administrative function. If you are double entering things, that is not an improvement to the administrative function. And you are asking for errors to be introduced into the process. So key integration is an imperative to be done.
At a bare minimum, you'll need to have a feed from your student information system into your degree audit system. Because you need the registration information, you need the grade information, you need the curriculum information. What programs of study are my students pursuing in order to represent those requirements to them? Where security offices at institutions get a little concerned is when we start asking for a push capability from a third-party application into Banner, into the student information system. There are good reasons for the concern, and there are many valid reasons for doing the push. And so there is a conversation that has to happen there, and sort of a dance with your IT security team, your vendor, likely also with your purchasing department, because some of the stipulations that your IT security will make have to be contractually included. And so things like that need to happen. There's a lot of coordination that needs to come together in order to have real-time or any integrations, actually.
Yeah.
One
Well,
question that I saw
Oh,
was,
yeah, go
are
ahead.
we moving away from DegreeWorks? And Mason will move away from DegreeWorks as part of a phase out. As we phase in with Stellic, we're targeting spring of 23 to go live fully with Stellic. And then we will probably be completely off DegreeWorks by spring of 25. It took us almost 3 years to stop using CAP once we were live with DegreeWorks. Part of that is the size of our institution. We have about 39,000 students and the makeup of our students. And so we have students, we don't have a continuous enrollment requirement. And so students who've been here started on CAP, we didn't shift them over to DegreeWorks. Anyway, we've done a teach out, it's great. That's a similar plan is in effect for DegreeWorks.
Okay, great, thanks. Well, you mentioned collaboration, you talk about IT. I think let's move on to the next topic, which is shifting to modern practices and the necessity of collaboration in that process. It's not a solo exercise, right?
No, not at all.
So let's actually launch the next poll, which is how do you currently collaborate with stakeholders on your campus? And then, Doug, let's get your thoughts on that. What does that process look like, either at Mason or other institutions where you have worked to ensure that the participation of the whole community is part of that process?
I just have to say that first we stop and we collaborate and we listen. Anyway, if you got that, thank you. And if you didn't, I'm probably even better. We collaborate in a variety of ways. The Registrar's office hosts sort of academic advising forums, or we did pre-pandemic, where we brought everybody from the academic advising community together, and we would do updates from the Registrar's office, from financial aid, from enrollment, from all of the various student services offices, and we would do that once a year. We didn't do it in 2020. We did a electronic version of it in 2021, and we have not yet done it in 2022. It's likely trailing part of the summer to catch incoming academic advisors for 2022-23. The Registrar's office also hosts a variety of standing committees. So there's the academic procedures and it's APAC, Academic Procedures Advisory Council, right? And we talk a lot there about some of these specific, like really down to the nuts and bolts of what does the form look like? What information is included on the form? Who can sign the form? And we talk about the forms as, I keep gesticulating like it's a piece of paper, but a lot of them are digital artifacts now and electronic workflows, which, by the way, is what I would like to get to for a degree clearance process. We're not there yet. And I want to be very clear that we have not achieved the vision of a seamless degree clearance process yet. I don't want to misrepresent. I want to say that this is a labor of love that is in progress, that we are moving toward, but we are moving toward it. And so being able to build relationships with people, sort of explain the vision for where we want to go and why we want to go there. It's administratively helpful. It helps the students. It provides greater agency for the student. It will reduce overall complaints, et cetera. It will improve the university's graduation numbers. All of those things are important. One of the questions I saw too was, how do you convince the academic advisors to either submit substitutions and waivers? That's it's a nut to be cracked, right? There are a couple of different ways that you can do it. You can make the process really easy. You can enable the students to submit a request to have that done that simply gets reviewed by the academic advisor before processing. At some institutions, like I said, the advisors themselves had the authority to go into the degree audit system and process an exception. DegreeWorks, I don't know how many of you are familiar with DegreeWorks. The substitution, exception, and waiver handling doesn't always result in the outcome that you were looking for. And so there's a little bit of a massaging of things that has to happen. And so that's why we retain it in the registrar's office rather than push it out. But the process of them initiating the form, we encourage and we explain why it's important early on in the process. It's similar to the way that I described it previously just in this webinar, and all of the different benefits that come from that, they will also be part of reaping. We have a formal place in the curriculum review process, and we have representation on the undergraduate academic council and the graduate academic council. And I am a non-voting participating member of the faculty senate. And so all of the ways that the registrar's office can be involved in all of the sort of component parts that come together to make this degree clearance process a thing, you need to be involved in. And any one of those relationships can make a really big positive difference for you in streamlining your clearances. And again, it doesn't have to be 100% of your programs or 100% of your students. If you are streamlining one or two schools or colleges or even one program, that will help, and that will help build sort of momentum and share that success story with others on your campus in order to convince them to also adopt some of the practices that made this thing a success there. But it is an ongoing process, and there is a lot of work. It is not easy work. Sometimes it is mad frustrating. And I get a lot of pushback from a lot of people a lot of the time, because a lot of people are stressed and working a lot, and getting an academic advisor who has 300 students over the national recommended number of advisees to take 3 minutes and submit a substitution, exception, waiver. They're doing the math. They're like, that's 900 minutes. So, it is, those are challenging conversations.
Well, I think I would say also a huge part of collaboration too, speaking as someone who's working for one of these tech companies, would be to say, invite your technology providers into that process. I mean, ideally, they see themselves as a partner and not just a vendor, and they are there to help provide a solution to you, and not just a tool that you would use over time. So it's not just tacked on, but really becomes something that you can integrate into the process and provides a solution to you administratively as well as to your students.
Yeah, and you said something earlier too, Reed, about mapping your process. And I can't emphasize that enough. If you have never done a business process analysis on your degree clearance process, do it. Do it. It will be revelatory for you. You will look at that and say, why are we doing it this way? And then also stepping back from that, if you've never taken a class on how to do a process map, watch a 20-minute YouTube video, and that will help you streamline this process. I would
also say we've got some of those online courses coming out with Acro sometime soon about that very thing.
Exactly.
Too, so.
Exactly. There are so many resources that you can employ in this process of streamlining your degree clearance process. And again, like, not all of them are directly related to, processing, awarding things in your student information system. There's a lot of sort of around on the fringes that can and will make a big difference. There was one other thing that you said, Reed, that I wanted to come back to, the process mapping. Okay. And then the ways that once you have your process map and you understand sort of what you're trying to do, that's especially when you can engage with your vendors and partners to say, I need help with this piece. How do we
Yes.
do this piece?
Yes.
And you know, this piece, it's not, I used to live there in Michigan, but this piece will vary from institution to institution. Some of it will be workflow related. Some of it will be the substitution exception handling related. Some of it will be a script to actually take the students who've been cleared for degree awarding to just push that award information into your student information system so that nobody has to rekey it. So that's where we also at Mason are leveraging some of the work that we're doing right now with Stellic on how do we process map some of these things. I'm going to call out Tracy because I saw her on the participant list. Tracy Rees is a business analyst in the Mason Registrar's office who's phenomenal, but you can't steal her away. So she's phenomenal. She's doing a lot of process mapping, and where we're able to, not just with degree clearance, but where we're able to, you know, chop steps out of the mix has been phenomenal. And that those kinds of things add up, not just for your degree clearance process, but for all of your other administrative work.
Yeah, great. Well, I mean, I want to make sure that we spend some time on questions that have been posed. But as we, before we do that, a huge part of this is the technology that you use. And so sometimes we can automate things. We've got great technology stacks at our institutions, and other times we don't. So a key part of this is just the evaluation of what you have. I think it may be helpful, you know, not why necessarily did you select Stellic. That may be helpful for some people to know. But what were some of the principles that you used as you went through the process? I think that is probably more applicable to a very broad audience.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I will shy away from the word automate. I tend to streamline things or improve efficiencies or maximize efficiencies. Automation for a lot of people scares a lot of people, and that's not really what we're doing anyway. We're taking component parts of an overall person involved process and making them more efficient, more less manual intervention in terms of data processing and data entry, things like that. All right, so large principles. One is a clear, concise degree audit layout. And so I've worked with a bunch of different degree audit systems. I started as a degree audit coordinator at the University of Notre Dame, implementing degree works, building out the requirements. We then, this is way back, we then converted to Banner at Notre Dame. And so at the time, degree works was its own standalone thing, and we converted 100% of our programs to CAP, curriculum advising and program planning within the then SunGard. Anyway, it was terrible. They went out and acquired DegreeWorks and then sort of built that into the Ellucian suite of products. The look and feel of a degree audit is really important for students. They need to be able to scan the list. They need to understand what the requirements mean. They need to understand what the statuses are. They also need to be able to interact with it. And so one of the things that we were looking at was, can students build a plan, a registration plan directly from their degree audit? And so selecting from the list of unmet requirements, how do they meet those requirements first? And can they build like a shopping cart from that set of requirements? That way they know that the sections that they're registering for fulfill requirements that they actually need. So that was a big part. Again, tailored for a population at Mason that is largely first generation. We are the largest, most diverse institution in the Commonwealth of Virginia. And so we try to do things that enable a more inclusive, a more equitable experience for all of our students. And you should too, regardless of your student population. So that was one. The requirements-based reporting piece was huge. We have a backlog of reporting needs at Mason, and a business intelligence team that, while capable, is slightly understaffed and overburdened with the number of types of reports that they are trying to do, and sort of the data management that they are responsible for at the institution. And so having a set of delivered analytics that engages with the degree requirements, with the actual degree audit information, was critical for how we wanted to go forward. And then the planner piece, to be able to have students build out a plan based on the actual requirements, being able to push that plan directly into registration was a bonus. That wasn't one of the requirements that we set forth. Having the ability to make a plan was the sort of foundational principle that we operated on. Obviously, integration with our student information system, the possibility for integration with student information system. Mason's also going through a bunch of different initiatives, probably similar to your institutions, where we've got Salesforce over here, we've got EAB over here, we've got, Banner over here, and we've got, X other 5 different systems, and they all need to be able to talk at some level. And so having an interface that enables open API calls or some other transfer of data mechanism was really important.
Great. No, that's very helpful.
I'm so sorry to jump in real quick. I just want to briefly state that we are about 4 minutes from our time, but Reed and the rest of our panelists have generously offered another 10 minutes so that we can continue answering questions. If you guys need to, please hop off. This recording will be in the hands of Reed and Remy and Doug. And so if you guys are looking for a recording or any further information, please feel free to reach out to them directly. And thank you guys so much again for your time.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Christina. I will say, as we kind of close, and we'll shift into answering some questions now. There may be some of you who are interested in learning more about Stellic, and so we'll kind of put a poll up that asks if you're interested in that. I'll also, in the chat for everyone, just list the Stellic contact page that you can reach out to us for more details if you're interested in looking at more of the details there. Some of the questions pertain to just even how do you work, cut down on paperwork? That's a great question. I know that's a case with grad programs. We're actually working with a number of different institutions that are trying to define those more clearly. Somebody in the Q&A mentioned PeopleSoft milestones, and that's exactly what some of those institutions are doing. We actually, within the Stellic platform, have the capability of doing more kind of workflow and connecting some of those pieces together, or completing milestones manually, even as Doug mentioned. That's better than not having visibility to the students. And some are choosing to even break down like a PhD dissertation into multiple steps within the planning function in Stellic. Then you can create a pathway that says, hey, that step should be done in the spring semester of your 3rd year, just to give more visibility to that process as well. So that may be a key consideration as you're thinking about the technology and presenting that information to students.
And one of the questions was, how do we cut down on the paperwork? This again is one of those places where, are we cutting down on physical paper, or are we cutting down on sort of oversight and requirements? And part of what we want to do is do what Reed just talked about, and breaking out a larger overall non-course requirement into component pieces, for example. Creating a non-course requirement in your student information system is also a way to accomplish, tracking whether a student has completed something. Enabling the academic unit to report that the student has completed a particular thing still requires some intervention by a person, right? And so what we have been doing, and I think a lot of higher ed has been doing based on the pandemic and accelerating a movement toward more online availability of administrative services is converting paper forms into electronic workflows. And we use a variety of different solutions there. It's a mix of things, everything from Microsoft Forms to Caspio dynamic forms. And then we're building out Ellucian Workflow, which is delivered product as part of the Ellucian Banner student information system. And enabling, more streamlined, more accurate, more data controlled communications. So, and what I mean by that, anytime you convert a paper form into a digital form or digital workflow, you lock down sort of some of the element of human error. You're feeding the student ID number, you're feeding the student's name as it exists in the student information system, the curriculum that they are registered for currently or enrolled in currently, and then giving the unit a limited number of options, either through a drop down or a checkbox or something like that, so that people aren't just writing whatever on forms, which has happened. And then, that there's some confusion and some back and forth. Eliminating that by converting those into digital artifacts is an important step.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
But I don't recommend eliminating or reducing, some of the oversight. You can shift the oversight if you build out your degree audit and you're comfortable and confident that it is comprehensive, accurate, up to date. That's where the oversight can take place. And then you just check the audits or run reports against the audits in order to make those decisions. But the oversight is still critical.
And Doug, I appreciate you noting that there's a lot of different ways of capturing that information. You mentioned you're building out some of the banner workflows. Other institutions may use a separate form system that integrates within your SIS. Even within Stellic, we have some institutions that are using our workflow functionality that's kind of a low code workflow build out to capture some of that data too. One of those questions that Doug mentioned earlier was, do you want to then push that data out of that system back into your SIS? And there's various ways of approaching that. Some institutions say yes, some say no. So that's again, a data model, something that you would need to talk about, and what does that look like at your institution? There's a number of questions, and we can kind of answer some of the specific things about Stellic. The questions about, does this integrate with your SIS? Yes, and that it wouldn't work otherwise. So the way that you integrate is depends on what capabilities you have within the SIS. Most of them have the capability of at least running a query on your data and pushing that into some kind of a feed. We have a lot of institutions that do that. We've got a lot of institutions that are moving towards new APIs to push data into the system. And then Stellic has APIs to also export some of that data as well back into your system to operate. So does it work with all these different SISs? Most of the SISs that are noted, we have partners who are using those right now. At a previous institution, I built the integration for the homegrown system. So, and we regularly talk with partner institutions about what's the best way to do that. So we're in process on that with Mason right now and kind of finalizing that. So our goal is to make that as streamlined as possible. So you really do have SIS. Yes, SIS as your source of truth, because that's a key piece. So absolutely. I was kind of looking through some of the other comments and questions. Doug, one of the questions was, how do you present some of that student status information to students? You referenced kind of humorously, hey, if
the Domino's tracker,
if
right?
Domino's can do it, it's obviously is a lot more complicated than that. But how do you do that now, and what's your vision for maybe that happening in the future too?
Yeah, currently we're not doing it, and that's one of the frustrating things.
Okay.
We want to create those steps that are capturable and representable as a data element, and then push them up and surface them for students to review so that they have that insight and capability to say, here's where it is. And that will happen as part of the move of our clearance process through a workflow. And so we've got a couple of hoops to get through there. I saw a question about, is financial aid concerned about the auto apply? Yes, our financial aid office is concerned about a lot of things. And
Sure.
a lot of times, they're part of our academic calendar working group as well. And anytime somebody comes in with a calendar question, like financial aid is right there on the spot to be like, we can't do that, and the R2T4, and it's so yes, financial aid has some questions. And then I saw another question about how we're capturing diploma name, or how we're getting students to submit diploma name, and we haven't figured that out exactly yet. So that's another piece that we're building off of. I have a meeting with basically our institutional research office, which at Mason is called the Office of OIEP, Office of Institutional Effectiveness and Planning. So OIEP, talking about where can we sort of interject the exit survey as part of the grad clearance process, because we get a low response rate to that, and it's important information. And so we want to build it in as sort of, this is just something that you do as part of the ordering your regalia type things. But removing the piece of requiring the student to apply to graduate is still an important consideration there.
Okay, good.
More to come.
Yeah, and the integrations with your systems are so important, helping students to understand classes that are unapplied, and does that compromise their ability to receive financial aid is a key piece. And so communication on those tools.
Yeah, the course program of study piece
offers. Yeah, and that offers us the capability, if we have a better audit system that we can present to students, to even integrate more than what we're doing beyond the degree clearance process. So again, the whole goal is to really provide student agency, not just at the end, but throughout their entire educational experience is a key piece. So
the earlier you provide the agency, the better the outcomes for the students. So it really works. You're making an investment in streamlining your degree clearance process by building these things in and making them part of what the student interacts with as in the early part of their academic career.
And I will say that student adoption of whatever platform you choose or use is a huge part of this. So for us at Stellic, that's a key part of why we do what we do, trying to ensure that students are able to use it and want to use it. We find a lot of institutions and students start using it and then they tell other people. So we have really high adoption of the platform and continue to work and to see that happen. I saw there's a question about community college and reverse articulations, and that's something that, again, yes, it can work, but it may depend on how you do data sharing across institutions. So happy to talk with you if you've got, Jody, you posted that question. If you've got specific questions about that, we can look at what does that look like at your institution. A lot of it is defining how you retain those students in the system in order to continue to run audits and do those evaluations. But that's something that is becoming a national conversation on transfer, and not just transfer from 2-year to 4-year institutions, but also reverse transfer is really important as we know it. And so we want to participate in that conversation as well. So yeah, thanks for posting that. I don't know if there's any other questions or comments. I think we addressed most of them.
Yeah, we've lost I know almost half of the participants from the time. So
yeah, so I know, Doug, you'd probably be happy to take questions moving forward, even by email.
Absolutely. Feel free to
I'd be
reach
happy
out.
to do the same thing too. So yeah, we've been very glad to participate in this webinar with everybody today. So thanks everybody for joining us.
And thanks to Acro for
And
hosting.
Thank
yes,
you
we
guys.
appreciate the
Thank you
hosting.
so much. Thank you guys to our
Great.
panelists and to all of our attendees. Again, just to reiterate, if you guys want to reach out, all the contact information is somewhere in the chat here. And it sounds like they would be really excited to follow up. So thank you again. I hope you guys have a fantastic rest of your afternoon, and we will see you at the next webinar.
Take care.
Awesome. See
See
you
ya.
guys. Bye-bye.
Bye.